So, breaking down this week's top five at the box office, we have Onward in the number one spot at right around 40 million, a little under expectations, but still well in the lead here for the weekend. And after that, we have Invisible Man doing pretty well in its second weekend, below a 50% drop, right around 15 million. And then in third place, we have the other newcomer of the week, The Way Back, at 8.5 million and under 3,000 screens. Then after that, at four, we have Sonic the Hedgehog at 8 million. And Call of the Wild at 7 million. I think definitely the big news of the week is kind of Onward and its success or lack thereof, and kind of what's been happening in the world, and our society's crumbling, I guess. I don't know, but it's interesting because Onward, clear winner of the weekend, like as I mentioned, but 40 million, but is definitely below expectations. People were kind of looking at this Onward to get around 50 million. It's one of the lower Pixar opening weekends in quite some time. What do you make of this, Brendan? It's kind of a funky week, definitely.
Yeah, I think that obviously a lot of people are going to be kind of not blaming, but pointing to the coronavirus to kind of explain some films from now on kind of doing poorly. But I think Onward's one of those films that definitely took a slight hit from it, definitely. But I didn't see this film being a massive movie otherwise. I didn't expect Onward to just blow us away with numbers. I expected maybe 50 to 60. So mixed with the virus and just that the film's not it's an original Pixar film. They don't always do blockbuster numbers. Like, you're not going to be getting the 180 million that Incredibles 2 opened up with or something like that. I do think this film's going to have good legs. Pixar movies, they never really die except for the Good Dinosaur. I think every single one besides that has kind of found a life after theaters and has kind of lived on in a way. And I think Onward's going to probably have some decent legs here in North America. Overseas is definitely where it's going to have a question mark, though.
Yeah, you mentioned The Good Dinosaur, and it's actually its first opening weekend is actually right on par with The Good Dinosaur, which opened at a little over 39 million. So we'll see kind of when the actuals come in on Monday what exactly Onward has. But so it's right in line with that. So it's not great. And even just looking at Pixar in general, it's one of their lowest opening weekends, basically since Toy Story 2, way back in 1999. So it's really, really not great. And yeah, you mentioned they do, obviously with their kind of the original movies, there are far less gross than like your Incredibles 2 and your Toy Story 4s and all that. This is definitely at the lower end of that. And I think, right, we're not going to look at the coronavirus and say this is the cause for all problems at the box office. That's definitely not it. This was definitely a weirder Pixar movie. People see the trailer and there's it's a weird mesh of old kind of like fantasy stuff, and there's like half a dad with there's like a pants, like trousers, just walking around. It's kind of a weird premise that I'm sure a lot of people didn't know quite what to do with. But yeah, it's not doing really good here. I haven't seen this movie either. But I think the more interesting piece of this is kind of like what the coronavirus, kind of what effect it will have coming in just the weeks to come. We already saw last week where No Time to Die kind of bounced until November to kind of avoid that. And reports are saying that MGM and like the Broccolis, the big producers behind that movie, they're probably going to lose around 30 million from that move alone. And they hope that maybe things get better overseas. That's a really big overseas property, so they kind of hope that loss will be recouped later on. But we're in this kind of weird zone where we have Mulan coming out in a few weeks, which is probably going to be a big Chinese hit if it ever gets released over there or when it happens. It's a very weird time, so I can't really fault Onward's lack of success on the movie itself. Even if we kind of looked at Soul as the big Pixar movie of the year, but I feel like this is kind of tough. This is a tough beat for Onward.
Yeah, I mean the reviews were good. Now the reviews for Onward weren't like top notch. This is one of the best movies out there, one of the transcendent animated films. So I think that plays into it as well. But the overseas numbers, I think, is where you look at kind of a concern here for Onward. So $28 million overseas is what it opened up to. So $68 million overall. that overseas number, I think, is a very, very big issue, and it's going to be an issue for several other films as well, because it's not like Onward didn't open in that many markets this weekend. It opened up in 47 markets. Now, China didn't get a release there. Italy, it didn't get a release there. Korea and China didn't get releases there either. So at some point, if it comes out there, that'll be a solid bump for sure. But it was released in pretty much everywhere else in Europe, Australia. So there's some concerns for sure about how this virus, I think, is going to impact films overseas. And I think we've been avoiding talking about it on the pod because we didn't quite know the impact of it. I still don't know the impact of it on a broader scale, but in terms of film, I think it's going to have a really big impact. And I was kind of in denial about that for the past few weeks, but I think this might be the first little sign that it's going to really change 2020.
Yeah, and I think we definitely still have yet to kind of understand the true impact of this, because I feel like we're starting to hear, even in North America, we're starting to hear more and more cases of it come up. And I mean, in my day job, they told us to basically just bring all our stuff home because there could be a quick announcement from down on up that everyone just needs to stay home and work from home for the time being. So we are all still kind of in a holding pattern here. It's bizarre. It's a really weird time to release a movie. And even with No Time to Die getting pushed, we saw the cancellation of the South by Southwest Film Festival, which it really sucks. I hate when that happens. I mean, it's going to be a huge economic hit on the Austin area down in Texas, but I also feel really bad for a lot of those filmmakers. There's a lot of really small films that play there, and a lot of those movies just aren't going to be able to get into Cannes, and maybe we'll see what happens with Cannes in a few months if nothing gets better there. But a lot of those movies probably won't play at other festivals, and a lot of their releases are going to come in the next few months. So they were kind of hoping for South by to be like this really big springboard for their release and possibly the success. And that cancellation can change a lot of careers too, which is there's a huge ripple effect in this. It just kind of sucks. It's really a bummer.
It's very bad. And I think before we move on to talk about some other films, I think that it's worth noting the broader impact that this might have on the film industry this year. I hope that we get a handle of what's going on with this virus. And obviously, you don't want to scare people. Everyone wants to take precautions, and we don't know what the overall impacts are going to be. And yes, the mortality rate in a sense is not that high, but it is always something that you want to be cautious of, and you want to make sure that you are staying clean, staying safe, staying sanitized. But I think that some very interesting things in China are going down because you have every single movie theater has been closed in China. And the Chinese film industry is doing things that you wouldn't otherwise think to do. A very popular Chinese film called Lost in Russia, it was kind of the New Year's themed film, was set to come out early February. That's a movie that was expected to make a ton of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, just based on the fact that it was kind of the big New Year's themed film there in China in February. And you saw the company ByteDance, which is the blockbuster company behind TikTok. They actually got in touch with the studio, and they got the film and they released it on online streaming platforms, on 5 different video streaming platforms in China. So that's a very interesting kind of quick to action change in the industry. And it was reported that within weeks, 600 million people in China watched that film through their streaming services. So, I mean, that's pretty big. And I don't know if that'll happen here. I don't know if we'll see that start to happen, but I think this will definitely play well for streaming services here.
Yeah, and that's a great call, because we'll talk about Spencer Confidential in a little bit, but that's probably one of the bigger winners of this weekend, just all things in consideration here. Even though it's a pretty bad movie, and we'll get to that, but I am really interested to kind of see what movies are either hurt by this or decide to move. And I'm looking in the next 2 weeks, we have like Bloodshot and The Hunt, and then after that, A Quiet Place. I don't really see those as movies that are threatening to leave. I'm looking at Mulan is the big one, right? Because that was going to be a big movie over in China. So I imagine we would probably see something within the next few days about that movie, if anything at all. And after that, maybe I'm looking at Peter Rabbit 2, because that was a big movie. The reason that movie is even a thing is because that movie was really big overseas and it did pretty well here in the States. I think it made over 100 million, but it made a lot of its gross overseas, especially in the UK. So I think those are definitely two movies that I'm looking out for. So yeah, I don't know. What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's something that I think we're going to be seeing a lot of the. I mean, No Time to Die definitely is a big move. I mean, like literally a day after the tickets go on sale, it flips to or it gets pushed to November, and definitely was frustrating for a lot of people. But I do think it was. I don't know. We'll see if it was the right move, but overseas wise, that this is definitely the right move. As well, the Bond films usually come out in fall, so I was kind of shocked originally when this one was coming out in April. So maybe it'll even feel a little bit more comfortable. But November is now looking to be a very busy month at the box office. Just kind of throwing in that last Daniel Craig James Bond film, but I think that film moving opens the door for other major blockbusters. I don't think we're going to see smaller budget, kind of more American centric films get moved, but I think we might see some more blockbusters get pushed, potentially, if not here in North America, overseas.
And it's kind of weird. So now when we're looking a little ahead to April here, but probably the biggest movie we're looking at in April is New Mutants, which is so weird to say because we've been kind of in this holding pattern for what, three years at this point with that movie. So I mean, my hopes are definitely not up for that one. So it's kind of we're going to be in a weird time for quite some time, and probably until Black Widow comes out on May 1st. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But the next few weeks, we do have some interesting. I think a lot of people are looking forward to A Quiet Place 2, but there's definitely kind of a weird air around the industry, and people don't know quite what to make of anything. So it's really weird, and I think Onward is kind of the first little piece of this. I mean, like we said, there's other factors as well. I mean, maybe people didn't think it was very interesting or other things going on. So you can't blame everything. There's not a one-to-one correlation here, but it's very interesting. I think it's something we'll be kind of checking in with every single week until things get better.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. Yeah, it'll be something that is going to be probably we're going to see probably every day something new happen. I know over at Disney, there were reports of them not talking about moving films, but they're saying that they're checking things not even day by day, but hour by hour, checking the numbers and checking kind of their trajectory for a lot of these upcoming releases that they have. So that's something to take into account as well. But yeah, I think we're just going to have to be taking it kind of week by week, day by day, see what happens.
Yeah, it's really weird because I mean, this is probably what the biggest disease since like I don't know, like SARS or something like that. So this is very like we are in very just strange times. So there's definitely a lot of turnover there. But I guess for now we'll move on to The Invisible Man, which is it held up pretty decently actually in its second weekend. So it wasn't hit quite as much, which is why we can't really blame the coronavirus for everything. But 46% drop in its second weekend, 15 million. Over 50 million domestically. It's right around 100 million worldwide. Just nothing really new to report here, but it's Invisible Man doing really well against that budget.
That's just a shocking thing. Like 100 million globally now, just a couple weeks out, or 2 weeks kind of out in theaters now. That is really impressive for this film, and it kind of just goes to show you make a good movie, you get good reception, people enjoy it, good word of mouth, it's going to do well.
Yeah, it's just a really solid success story from start to finish. A couple of good trailers. You have a really good and thoughtful director in Lee Winnell, great star, really interesting stuff, very timely. It's really very much a success story through and through.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely one of the better stories for Blumhouse. I mean, kind of erase some of the other films that have come out this year and some of the issues. I mean, they're not losing a ton of money with some of their other, not bombs this year, but some of the other films that underperformed slightly. This is kind of making up for that for them.
Yeah, we washed away the stink of Fantasy Island pretty quickly with this movie.
Very quickly.
So we've been kind of in a quiet little time for Blumhouse here. I mean, we had Get Out a few years ago, which everyone seems to go back to, but after that we had like Ma and Glass, which actually both of those movies actually did very well, but everyone kind of no one's really like excited about those. I would say Black Christmas didn't do that great either, but um, I think this is kind of the beginning of a lot of like a lot of success for Blumhouse because we have The Hunt next week, which I'm sure will just start a lot of bad conversations in general. But I think the movie seems like everyone from early reactions really seems to like it. Then we have Run Sweetheart Run after that, which actually premiered at Sundance earlier this year, which I know Colin got to see, and he really liked that movie as well. So that could be a little interesting movie as well. So it's a little bit of the turning of the time for Blumhouse. They were never in danger of anything because all these movies made decent money against their minuscule budgets. But yeah, it's just every so often they have one of these crazy successes, and that's The Invisible Man.
Definitely.
Yeah. So from there, we'll move on to the other big release of the week, which I'm really excited to talk about, which is The Way Back, which is the Ben Affleck or the reimagining of the Sad Fleck persona. Just him dealing with a lot of his issues on screen. This movie was kind of right in line with expectations for around, so it made 8.5 million. I'm sure, I know expectations, this is hit right in there, but I'm sure Warner Brothers was probably hoping for a little more with kind of, it seems like it's from the trailers were really good. You have a star in there, sports movie. I'm sure they were probably hoping somewhere in the teens. But you can't sniff at this one too hard. It's doing pretty decently. There's still a lot of time for The Way Back, and this was never going to be a big time hit. So I wouldn't really call this a flop or a success either way. It just kind of is.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. I don't think this is a film that's bombing by any means. I think bombing for this movie would probably be like a under $5 million opening, but 8.5 is not too bad against that budget. I know that Warner Bros. Has had some movies that have been released in the past few months that have underperformed on decently, not large budgets, but I think of Motherless Brooklyn as one of them. One of the films that really underperformed. Or maybe not even underperformed because I don't know if it had that high of expectations, but just didn't do all that great. I think of The Kitchen, I think is one of them. But The Way Back is kind of on the higher side of that, of the films that have kind of decent budgets around $20 million that didn't make a ton of money at the box office. So The Way Back's kind of at the higher end of those films opening weekend wise. It had good reception, good buzz. I think that if it holds on to that, this movie will stick around for a little while.
Yeah, and it's rolling out overseas in in the next few weeks. So maybe the coronavirus isn't quite in play here. So it'll be all throughout April. It'll kind of release in more markets over and over. But just for the movie itself, I really like this movie. I think I'm one of the bigger Ben Affleck stans you'll see. I just really think he's a really interesting, one of our more interesting actors, and it seems like all his roles are very knowing, and I think this is like the most obvious one of all of them, where he's clearly going through a lot of his real life issues on screen, which I think makes this movie far more interesting than it has any right to be. I feel like I think if you there's better actors that you could put in this role, and I think Ben Affleck would say as much because he's very candid about. So he's like, yeah, he's a very good actor, but there's clear that other people are better than him, but because it's Ben Affleck in this lead role, it makes the movie take on such a deeper meaning because it's a lot about him and his real life struggles. And I took a lot away from that. I thought it was pretty inspiring and tough to watch at times, and I really dug it. What did you think? What did you think about it?
No, I agree. I think that the narrative behind this movie is the reason that I was excited for it. Just that it's Ben Affleck in a role like this, kind of trying to deal with, like, his character in the film, obviously dealing with alcoholism and stuff, and trying to find the way back from all that. But no, honestly, this is a film that I did enjoy. I thought he was really good in it. I think there's a really nice score in this movie too that I don't think is a phenomenal score or a super standout score, but I think it's one that complements the film. There are a lot of subtle, quiet scenes, and I think that the score carries this movie really well. A lot of the riffs are the same, like they're very reused, but they're very comforting in a way, or you really feel a lot from them in a way as the film goes on. I really dug the movie. One of the better films I've seen so far this year. Not a ton of great stuff has come out up to this point, but I think Ben Affleck was impressive here. Really, he was good. Like he was in touch with himself in this film, and it was great to see. But yeah, that narrative that you're talking about, that's what made me interested in this movie to begin with. So I think that obviously there are probably some better actors out there to fit this role or to be in this film, but I think he fits this role really well, and I'm just happy to see him in it.
Yeah, and I really like. So this movie was initially titled The Has Been, which I think, like on the surface, people would probably say that's the better title. But I think I really like the change here to the way back because for about 2/3 of this movie, I wouldn't say I wasn't vibing with it, but I was wanting a little more because it feels like the movie was it was giving you a lot of the same that we've seen with a lot of these sports movies where guy with some baggage comes on to a team who's they're a team full of underdogs and they have to work to get better and they have to out-grit the other team because they're not as talented, and there's a lot of that stuff in there. But then the third act happens, and so you get a lot of that stuff kind of folded into the first two acts, and then there's just more to come. And I think it's when we really understand that for this character, and I think it's one of the more poignant parts of this movie where it's the basketball was not ever going to heal him. It's like, it's not that kind of uplifting, like, hey, we won the big game, so all of my issues are saved, And I think, right. I wonder if that kind of more realistic depiction of alcoholism and vices, I wonder if that may turn off people, because this movie's kind of somber. It's like there's some jokes here and there, but it's a pretty serious movie about a lot of serious things. And I think that third act is what really stuck out to me, because this movie kind of ends with it's really interesting because it kind of ends with where the the happy montage of good things happening to someone would start. So you don't get that overwhelming emotional, you get that release, that catharsis, but it's kind of like you feel that we're on better footing by the end of it. And I really like that as like a kind of a subtler way to end this movie, because you can sense that things are starting to turn the right way for this character. And then you look in real life, and that's kind of where Ben Affleck is, because he's been just really candid about the struggle he's dealt with. And I think one of the more interesting tidbits that he shared on the press tour was when he was writing the new Batman movie, and he turned over the script to someone he really appreciated, and he said, I think the script's really good, but I think you're going to kill yourself working over this. And just a really powerful thing to say to someone. I don't know if I would say that to anybody. But so just kind of just really seeing that, and I think Ben Affleck, I think this movie was really good for him in general. We kind of talked about that, but I left this movie feeling really good for him just in general and for this movie. So it's really a win-win in all situations here.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I thought some of those Snyder Cut people would have driven up the box office, but I guess that proves that there are a lot of bots out there.
It's really funny because I really like the trailer of this movie. I think it's really, really good. I've watched it a few times, but you look at the comments and all of them are like, please come back to Batman, or like, oh, the score in this trailer sounds like the Man of Steel score. It's like, oh, release the Snyder Cut, and that's all people care about. Oh my god, it's so weird. Oh my god.
No, it's something else, but no, that they need to come out in droves and drive up this box office next weekend. Try to see if they can do that, but I don't know, a lot of bots.
Yeah. And I really like Gavin O'Connor as a director. This is, I think, the second time he's worked with Ben Affleck, the first being The Accountant. He's quietly put together a pretty solid resume for himself as kind of the dude director dealing with masculine issues, but in a very thoughtful and kind of honest, emotionally honest way. So you have Warrior in there, and Miracle. The Accountant is in there as well, and even The Way Back. You kind of see where he is very much into kind of just dudes kind of dealing with stuff. And even Warrior is like one of the most masculine movies ever, where it's like people don't know how to talk to each other, so they just punch each other in the face repeatedly until they can finally say they're sorry.
Yeah.
I really like what he does in this movie. I think he's, along with Ben Affleck, kind of shepherding this project along with his kind of personal issues. I think his direction is really solid here, where it's little documentary style ish, where he has like those little little snap zooms that you've seen that I think he uses pretty effectively. And I think he's also really good at just filming sports. I think some of the fight scenes in Warrior are incredible, and um, even here, it's very realistic depiction of high school basketball, where it's pretty obvious that they cast young actors for the basketball team. They kind of cast like athletes first, and then kind of worked on their acting afterwards. It makes everything very thrilling. It makes it more realistic, and it kind of makes this journey just more worthwhile. Just really well done, even if it's pretty familiar in a lot of parts.
No, yeah, he has a really good touch on this film. Definitely great direction here. But yeah, you're right. Those basketball sequences are entertaining, and they do feel pretty realistic. And I love how he shoots some of them. Some of them a little bit fast paced, quick cuts. But I also just like to see some of the passing game. It really like you're kind of watching the game in a pretty cool way in this film. But yeah, it was a good movie, and I do hope it continues to do well at the box office, and I hope it has good legs here and now, because I think it's a good watch, and I think it would pay a lot of people a good service to check this one out.
Yeah, it didn't really do anything incredibly new, but I think it's one of those things where it's very very solidly produced, and it has that real life touch that really just elevates it above the rest. But we'll move on here to the fourth and fifth place movies for the weekend. We have Sonic the Hedgehog as the return, kind of dealing with its first kind of big head-to-head matchup with Onward coming out this week. It dropped 51%, so not too bad there. We kind of talked this movie to death, so I don't really have much to say unless you do.
No, nothing much. I mean, 460 theaters dropped from last week, 50% drop. That's not too bad. It's about to cross 300 million globally. It's still on a roll.
Yeah, and then we have Call of the Wild in 5. It continues to exist and probably continues to lose money for 20th Century Studios. It's still weird saying that. I have to catch myself. It's like when the Chargers moved from San Diego to LA. It's like, wait, you catch yourself saying San Diego Chargers still. It's the same thing there. But yeah, Call of the Wild, right around 100 million worldwide. It's still budget of 135, so it's not doing particularly well. So it's still here existing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it'd be good for them if they're able to even hit 135. That's probably the goal at this point.
Yeah, there's reports out there that kind of said this movie was probably going to lose around 50 to 40 million for the studio. So that's not what you want. And so from there, we'll kind of move on to Emma, which I talked about last week and really, really dug. This movie expanded wide. It's now in a little less than 1,600 theaters here in the U.S. Made $5 million, which isn't particularly great, but it's not bad either for this kind of movie. It's not anything like Onward, or it's not going to appeal to everybody, but it's doing well, and I'm happy to see Focus Features give it a chance and kind of put it all across the country.
Yeah, and I mean the per theater average was actually pretty solid for this movie, a little over $3,100. I think that's not too bad. That's higher than most of the other movies in the top 10 this week, with exception to Onward, and I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, and The Invisible Man. Besides that, it outperformed pretty much every other top 10 movie in terms of per theater average. So 5 million is not too bad. It's past 20 million globally, which is a good kind of starting point for this movie. And I did enjoy it. I checked it out yesterday. Anya Taylor-Joy, I think she's fantastic, and I love to just watch her in movies. She's really good. She's really good. She's going to be good for a long time. The costume design here, I hope it's. We talked about this last week. I asked you, does it have any Oscar potential? I think that's where it gets it, because I mean, just gorgeous costumes all throughout this film. Great to look at, and I hope that even though it can't come out early in the year here, I hope it definitely sticks in the mind of people and kind of makes a return potentially in the fall in voters' minds, because it deserves to get recognized. Beautiful, beautiful film.
Yeah, and Anya Taylor-Joy is so good, and yeah, she's incredible in this movie, and she has whatever movie she's in, she adds that little devious charm just to her character really nicely, and it's definitely not on the page. It's just her and how she emotes and kind of how she reacts to things, which kind of gives this movie a really little interesting undertone. I love her, and yeah, she's going to be around for so long, because she's in the next Robert Eggers movie, the Viking movie, which is probably going to be the first love of all film bros out there, up there with the Lighthouse. So she's going to be around for a really long time, and I can't wait to see what she does next. But we'll move on to kind of what I hinted at earlier is the big winner of the weekend, which was Spencer Confidential. It's a movie, that's for sure. I saw a really good tweet out there where it was Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg. The only reason they didn't upload this to Barstool immediately was because they don't have a streaming platform yet. And because this movie is the broiest movie to ever bro ever, so it's totally like kind of like an ego move for Marky Mark. So he's obviously, this movie takes place in Boston, and he's a cop, and the movie begins with his character goes to jail because he beats up his commanding officer so hard because there was a little domestic abuse in there, so he just beats the crap out of him, and then he goes to jail. And to give you a good idea of what kind of movie this is, after just a very obvious musical cue, we see Mark Wahlberg with glasses in the middle of a prison library and just reading, and in massive, just bold text on the screen, we see prison to give you so that you know what setting we are in. So that's the kind of movie that we're dealing with. And there's a sex scene later on between Eliza Schlesinger and Mark Wahlberg to foreigners. Feels like the first time. There's a bar in a Boston cop bar to the tune of Sweet Caroline, because obviously.
Why not?
And full disclosure, I haven't finished this movie yet because it's really hard to sit through. But it's definitely the big winner of this weekend because Netflix, with their ever growing algorithm, it's number one on their new top 10 feature. So people are really interested in it. I don't really know if that top 10 is building the phenomenon or if the phenomenon happened on its own. But yeah, I think Spencer Confidential, despite its stupid title, stupid movie, and terrible spelling of Spencer, seems like it's coming away as kind of the big talking point out of the weekend.
And how's Post Malone in there?
From what I've seen like half this movie, but he's in there for he's in the prison scene and he gets into a fight with Mark Wahlberg. He's actually not the worst, surprisingly. It's obviously stunt casting, and he just looks and you just look at his face and all his tattoos. Yeah, he's a good for a prisoner, you know? But he seems to have decent charm. I don't know. Maybe he wants to do more movies. Who knows? I wouldn't scoff at it. He's not the worst. This movie has plenty more problems than Post Malone. That's what I would say.
That's fair. Reasonable.
And last thing I actually wanted to touch on is a movie that I'm really looking forward to in future weeks, kind of when it goes wide, is First Cow, which is the first A24 movie of the year. It was the per screen winner of the weekend at the box office, so it came in with a little over 24,000 on 4 screens, a little under 100 million, or 100 million, geez, 100,000 gross for the weekend. I'm really looking forward to this. I don't really have much to add per se because we still need to see this movie, but it looks delightful, and it seems like it's going to be probably one of the first big indie hits of the year.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't know much about it. I just know that there's some people, some hardcore A24 fans that are trying to make this into a little bit of a meme. Just the fact that it's called First Cow and that it may or may not be starring a cow. But I don't know. It's really interesting, and we were talking about it a little bit before we came on. I'm looking forward to it. And A24, anything they do at this point, I mean, why not go check it out? They make interesting content, good content. So I'm looking forward to it.
I feel like, can we call it? I feel like we can't call A24 movies indie movies anymore. They feel like they're their own thing, you know, where it's them and Neon and maybe Sony Pictures Classic. They're kind of in their own little bucket. And I feel like when we think of indie, we shouldn't really think of those anymore, because I feel like A24 is basically an institution at this point.
They're kind of transcending the indie, right? They're kind of leaving that and kind of becoming their own, or they're kind of their own sort of stream. So I think that, yeah, you might be right. We might have to look for a new studio to fantasize over and become our new A24.
I can feel the love coming for Neon just after Parasite and all the stuff they do. I can feel that one coming, but Yeah, because A24 it's going to be a big year for them because they have The Green Knight, which I'm really looking forward to, which actually was supposed to premiere at South by, so that's obviously going to hurt them a little bit. But that seems to be kind of a bigger budget movie and kind of a fantasy movie with Dev Patel, and there's a monster or a tree giant in there. It looks kind of cool, but yeah, it's definitely the beginning of a big week year for them.
Definitely. I mean, what better way to start it than First Cow?
Absolutely, gotta love cows. But I think that just about wraps it up for this week. We'll come back next week, kind of see what all the fuss is about with Bloodshot, which I don't really know. It's the Vin Diesel thing, so we'll see. We'll see. Then we have The Hunt, which is finally coming out after its delays and controversies and all that. We have I Still Believe, which is kind of a Christian movie starring KJ Apa, so sure. But as always, Brennan, thank you for joining me.
For sure. I mean, it's about that time of year. The Christian movies are about to come out. Easter already. And then Bloodshot, oh God, kill me now. And yeah, The Hunt, finally, here we go.
Yeah, so you can check back with us next week, and we'll talk about all those and more. And as always, you can check us out on MovieBabbleReviews.com for some great content as well, and follow us on social. And yeah, until next time, thank you very much for listening to us.